In this episode of My Words, My Book, we have Lydia Bright. Lydia Bright, star of The Only Way Is Essex, has broadened her career to include podcasting, fashion and children's authorship with the 2024 release of Mummy and Me. A devoted mother and NSPCC ambassador, she's also recognised for her social media collaborations promoting fashion, beauty and family life. So Lydia, why did you become an author?
So I decided to become an author when I was actually pregnant with my little girl Loretta, who is 5 now. And I felt like there was a bit of a gap in the book market for a book that represented a single parent family. That's what I was becoming, a single mother. And I wanted to write my book to Loretta, my little girl, just so that she could feel that she was represented in books and for other children as well. I think I remember you saying this, Laura, when we were at a book showcase, that it is so important for children to feel that they're represented in books. And the more that, that they see children that are, different cultures, different colours, different family setups, the more that they're going to become sort of like inclusive as adults. And I remember you kind of really hit hard on that in your like speech, shall we say?
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that you said there, Lydia, about different families, and I wanted to include here,
Yes.
Mummy Debbie.
Yes.
And your mum is a foster care. And I think as well, we don't see many storybooks that include children who are fostered.
Yeah.
And I just wanted you to share that with, because I know there are going to be some children who are watching, listening this podcast, who are fostered.
Yeah.
Just share what that was like growing up with
Yeah.
your mum as a foster carer, having different children within the home environment.
It was chaos, Laura. Look, it was
a good chaos,
oh
right?
my gosh, the best kind of chaos. It was definitely a different childhood to probably the majority of the children that were in my class, because, majority of children in the UK have 2-3 siblings, and I often had like 7 siblings. We all look different, we all acted different, and it was a very busy household, and I loved it because, oh my gosh, I never had those feelings of loneliness. Some children that grow up as, the only child, sometimes they have those feelings of, longing to have like a child there to play with. I never had any of that. If anything, there was a lot of times where I was like, oh my goodness, I wish I was a single child and I could just be by myself and have some peace and quiet. But look, I always say that there was some, amazing parts of being part of a foster family. Of course, there was some negative, but I always say that, for all the negative, there's like 100 that outweigh that were positive. And I think, there is a real lack of representation in children's books when it comes to fostering as well. I do think that as time is evolving, and I think every generation will get better, there's more representation in books across the field. And I have seen a few fostering books that are, slightly not as like well-known, celebrated books. But I think as, the generations evolve, there will be more sort of representation coming along.
Absolutely. And I think for children, I'm speaking to the camera now, it's so important that a child who's fostered can see themselves in those books, because I think for children who are fostered who are adopted, it's quite lonely for them. They probably think, I am the only child who's been fostered.
Yes.
And I read Ashley John Baptiste's book, where he talks about being in foster care as a
His
child.
adult book, is it?
Yes.
Is it Looked After? I've bought
Looked
it.
After.
I haven't read it yet, but I've got it on my bookshelf ready to read.
Your mum was at the launch.
Yes,
Mummy Debbie was at the launch. And he talks about what it was like for him in school,
Yeah.
the only one that was fostered in his class. And I think we do need to normalise that, as you say. I mean,
Yeah.
I was raised in a single parent household. There were children who have two mums, two dads.
Yeah.
And some children feel that sense of shame. And I think with your book, what I like about Mummy and Me, it's so important that children can say, yeah, this is me. This is
Yeah.
what it's like for me, and have that sense of pride about their family, you know?
Definitely. And I think that it's you've got a book as well, haven't you? It's your
My
my
family,
families,
your family,
and
yeah.
it explains all of that. We've got that on our bookshelf, and it explains all of the different families. And I think that books like that are so important to educate children. And I think when it came to me writing my book, I almost wanted it to just be sort of like a hidden sort of like a undercurrent of the book. I wanted it to be like a magical children's book that just so happens to be a single parent family. And that was very important to me. So it would be kind of like a children's adventure and a beautiful story. But this is a book with one mum and a daughter. Yeah, that was kind of like really what I wanted to nail with this story, because of them informative books which are so fantastic. They explain, all the different parent setups and family setups. They're so important to have. But I also felt that there was a real kind of lack of a magical story that just so happened to have a single parent family within the story. Because I think whenever you watch things on telly, whenever you read it's always two parents.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's done in a magical way. This is always a great question that I love to ask authors. What was your favourite children's book, either as a child or as an adult now, Lydia?
Okay, when I was a child, The Hungry Caterpillar, I absolutely loved that book. I think it's a combination of things. When I was a child, I don't think there was a lot of books that kind of had holes in pages and, the cut up pages that it had. For me, that was the first that I remember seeing. And I found that a lot more engaging maybe as a child. Um, I just absolutely loved it, and sort of like the metamorphosis of the butterfly at the end. I just always remember that was my favourite children's book. Now I obviously read a lot more children's book, having a 5-year-old, and one that she absolutely loves. And I remember the first time that I read it, I got slightly choked up and emotional. Is Grandad's Island.
Beautiful book.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think it's got such a powerful message, and I'm a big advocate for books with like hidden messages or powerful messages, or like a meaning behind them. And Loretta, my daughter, is obsessed with Grandad. And the fact that, it's this story about this boy that absolutely adores his granddad. They've got this beautiful relationship. And it explains the story of losing a grandparent, but in a really magical way. And look, my daughter hasn't lost her granddad at all, but it's just teaching those sort of life lessons in a beautiful way. And I think, yeah, Loretta just really resonates with it because she's got that real strong connection to her granddad. So yeah, that's one for her and me.
And yourself. And I feel one of the things that I always say is that children's books are great for adults as well, because I
Yes.
think there are many children's books that I read. I think myself being an author, I get sent a lot of books to endorse and to read myself. And I just love the stories. There are so many fantastic books out there. And I think one of the points you made there, Lydia, that Loretta has a fantastic relationship with her grandfather. Um, Introducing children to books that cover taboo subjects like
Yeah.
death and grief. And that's important for not only children who have experienced grief themselves, but for other children to have that understanding,
Yeah.
you know?
And we're all at one point in our life going to experience some sort of grief, and you know, Loretta will experience that in her lifetime with, you know, great grandparents and stuff. And to, you know, the fact that she's loved this book so much, it will be easier for me to kind of explain when we come to that situation, you know, to go back and reference that book. Yeah, that's a really powerful one. I will say another one as well.
You
Just
can
because
have
I'm
one more,
greedy,
Lydia.
just because
Go
I'm
on, one
greedy.
more.
I absolutely love It Takes Two to Tango as well. Another really powerful book with a beautiful message behind it. And I think that, again, really resonates with me, with my family. And I remember introducing that book to Loretta when we had a foster child who ended up being adopted by two dads. And the story follows a little penguin in America, in New York, in a zoo, and there was two male penguins that fell in love, and you know, they kept trying to make an egg and it never happened, and then this egg was abandoned, and they put the egg in the nest and it hatched, and these two men loved this penguin like it was their own. And it's a true story, and at the end it was emotional when I read the kind of, you know, the endings explaining that it was a true story. And it was just a book that really resonated to us. It was a great way for me to explain to Loretta where this baby had gone on, and he's got two daddies that are going to adopt him. And I think the books are very powerful in that way for adults to utilize, to, you know, in different times in their lives, to reference something that's going on in our life, to, you know, make sense of something. I just think they're very powerful in that way.
And talking about powerful books, Lydia, Mummy and Me.
Yes.
So this book was beautifully illustrated
Yes.
by Jojo Clinch.
Yes.
And that's my middle name, hence Jojo and Gran Gran. My middle name is Josephine.
Yes.
So Jojo, fantastic name. So do you want to give, I suppose I should, a quick summary? I know we've touched on many beautiful points in this book already, Mummy and Me, but anything more that you want to share as a summary, Lydia,
Yes.
please?
So the reason that I chose elephants as the characters in this book is because I discovered when I was pregnant and about to become a single mum that in the wild, all elephants are single mums. So yeah, so the children are brought up in herds, which consists of the matriarch, which is the grandmother, the mother and the aunties, and then all of their children, all their offspring. And the male elephants, you know, they're solitude. So yeah, all elephants are single mums in the wild. So that was the basis why I chose the characters to be elephants. The child elephant is called Etta, which was sort of a play on Loretta. So that's why I chose that name. And the story is, you know, the magical adventure of a mum and her daughter who are very different, similar to me and Loretta. And it follows the magical adventure of us and our magic making days. And there's a part in the book where Etta questions her family. You know, it's small, it's her and her mum, and there's a character in there that's from a big family, and she almost questions, is that better that they're from a big family? And you know, then it kind of comes back to the point that it doesn't matter what size your family is. You know, all families are beautiful, whether they're huge and ever evolving like the family that I'm from, you know, my parents being foster carers, or they're just small like mine and Loretta's. And yeah, they should all be celebrated.
That's absolutely wonderful. That I just think it's a beautiful, beautiful story, Mummy and Me. So do you have a favourite page in the book, Lydia?
Yes, my favourite page is when the adventures are just beginning and me and Loretta, or the mummy and Etta, are doing our colouring in. And do you know why I love that page so much? Is because of I've got to give credit to Jojo. Jojo's Clinch's illustrations on that page are so beautiful and so imaginative, and the way that she draws in the storytelling so beautifully through the pictures. And I love her artwork. You know, the reason I chose her is because I love her watercolors that she uses, the pastels. But that page visually for me is just so beautiful.
And it jumps out at you on the
It
page, yeah.
does.
And I think the way that it's illustrated, the pastel colours as well,
Yeah.
it's nice and soft and warm.
That's what I wanted. You know, I'm very much about like aesthetically pleasing, and I really wanted it to look so beautiful on a bookshelf. You know, be one that you really want to display.
Amazing. So what question would you ask yourself about this book? If you was interviewing yourself, what would you say that you would want?
I feel like I would probably ask myself like the inspiration behind the book. And I think a lot of authors, when it comes to writing their book, they've always, or their first book almost, they've always got kind of like a personal story to tell, something that inspired them. You know, a lot of my story was inspired because of my personal circumstance. So yeah, probably like what was my inspiration behind it.
Which was your personal story. I think you're right in saying that. And I think for myself, being an author as well, is my stories, whether it's a fiction book or non-fiction book, is from a personal experience or something that I've seen or heard.
Yeah.
So I think for the children who are inspiring writers,
Yes.
you are sometimes dictated to by your environment as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. And I
Yes, yeah.
think that, you know, a story is best told from, you know, from the heart, isn't it? And I think that if you're an inspiring author and you're kind of stuck on where to write, you know, think about something that you feel really passionate about, and then normally an idea is born from that.
That's a great message. Thank
Yeah.
you, Lydia, for that point. I learned something there. But what do you want children to learn from this book, to take away? So when they finish reading the book, what would that message be?
I hope that the message that they can take away is just, you know, acceptance of every family, you know, celebration of every family. And, you know, as we touched on earlier, I just think the more that children see different families, different cultures, different colours, different upbringings and financial status, the more that we're exposed to all of our differences, the more inclusive that we're going to become as adults. So, you know, I just hope that it's just one of many books that children can read that will just help make them inclusive as they grow up.
And isn't that a wonderful point to finish on, Lydia, about inclusive books?
Yes.
Thank you so much, Lydia. And you can read Mummy and Me. And remember, I always say to use your local library. It's free. And I always finish off with Claudia and Tess on Strictly Come Dancing always end up saying, keep dancing. And I always say, keep reading. Thank you, Lydia.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. This podcast was woven in partnership with our friends at Tapestry, the childhood education platform. They have kindly devised the educational resources for each podcast interview. Tapestry helps you celebrate children's learning, improve communication with families, and streamline your admin with powerful booking, invoicing, and management tools, giving you more time for what matters, the children and you. Visit tapestry.info to find out more. This podcast series was recorded at the Quick Brown Fox Video Production Studios in Wandsworth Town, London, with top-notch equipment and a knowledgeable team who are always happy to help. Recording our podcast has been a breeze.